Hi, everybody. I want to spend some time walking you through how I plan and prepare for a modern classroom. Now, I'm doing this because it's easier for me to speak and talk you through it rather than just typing a bunch of stuff out. But I will have the links to any of the documents that I'm using in the chat, or not in the chat, sorry, in uh, the the box of the post. So you should be able to find it without me sending you a link or anything like that. So obviously, whenever we're doing anything in the classroom, right, we're starting with the standards first. And I sort of have them memorized over years and years of using them. So I had to make a decision. What is it that I wanted to do? So I know my standards. I know my curriculum. Okay, how am I going to actually use my modern classrooms model in my classroom? And what I saw a lot online was uh, a lot of people doing 5, 6, 7, 8, 12 lessons in a unit. I don't. That never seemed to work for me. It felt like I was trying to shove too many things in a unit. Um, to have it make sense in English in a way that maybe it makes more sense in a science or a math classroom. So I was telling our Zoom group yesterday that I only plan 3 lessons for each unit. I do a historical context lesson because I do teach American literature, then a reading lesson, and then a writing lesson. And so every unit has those 3 major components in it: a historical context, a reading lesson, and a writing lesson. And I plan that these take about 3 to 5 days, depending on what I'm asking the kids to do. So I knew that I wanted to use Kelly Gallagher's book, Write Like This, to plan out my units because my class is more writing focused. It is reading focused, but writing is the area that I want to spend the most with my students this year, is building up their ability to write. So I decided to split up my units into writing studies. So my first unit is Express and Reflect, which is essentially reflective and narrative writing. My unit 2 is called Evaluate and Judge, which is basically argumentative writing and persuasive writing. And then the readings that go along in each unit are about those topics. Now, you may work in a school system or in a team that wants to split up your units thematically, which is absolutely fine. Most of my textbook I use is My Perspectives, and that is split up by kind of like essential question and theme. So you could set up your units that way, whatever works best for you. So what I did was I made a plan for each lesson that I wanted, and then I wrote out exactly what did I need to accomplish in order to get that lesson done, right? So I wrote out my lesson. My first lesson is the historical context lesson, and I know it's called A New Nation in my textbook. So I wrote down everything I needed for my historical context slides that I made. And then the second part was going to be the assignment. So I have a document I'll show you, which is the assignment that I created, and part 3 is the mastery check. So they have to watch the lesson video, which is part 1, and do their notes. Part 2, they have to complete some sort of activity or assignment, and part 3 is their mastery check. And that repeats for every lesson. So that is my general plan. One thing that I did, I'm a very visual person. I need to see how it all lays out over the course of the semester. I teach semester classes, not year-long classes. So I have less time with the students. Now, I made a calendar in which I have planned out every single day and exactly how long I think each element is going to take. You do not have to take, and experienced teachers using the model can probably attest to this. Your whole class period does not have to be modern classrooms. My thought process is, let's take the modern classrooms model and let's let's use it like it's meant to be used. If it's replacing most direct instruction, then okay, then I'm going to use it for direct instruction, not necessarily for every single thing we do. So for example, I do a workshop model. So we do some sort of activity to start class. Then we move into independent reading, and I conference with students about their independent reading. Then we move into writing time, which is our workshop, our writing workshop, where we're working on some sort of skill. This is all, these first three things, these are all together. We're doing them as a large group or maybe small groups. And then we move into the second half of my class, which is devoted to their independent, self-paced lesson work time. And so that model is kind of repeated throughout each day. Now you may have I'm sure you'll have a completely different schedule, but that is how I've chosen to lay out my lessons. And there is going to be a lesson deadline at the end of each week, and then a final deadline at the end of the unit. And I've color coded my units. So this right here, starting the 16th, is unit 1, and then the green is unit 2. So that gives you an idea. So I put mine in a calendar. That's an option for you, not something that's required, but something that I do to kind of give myself a visual idea of how this is all going to work. Now these things will change. None of this is set in stone, but this is kind of my pacing, my personal pacing calendar. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show you my first unit, in hopes that it is helpful to you as you're preparing. So I have a unit folder. My first unit is Express and Reflect. Now I have a document that just has my teaching notes, but every lesson has its separate folder. So I have 3 lessons, like I told you. Lesson 1 is the historical context lesson. So I have prepared 4 things. I made my slide presentation. I made my notes, my guided notes that students are completing. I made my mastery check, and I made my final, this is the assignment for the lesson. So I'm just going to briefly show those to you. So my slides are longer than maybe what has been shown in previous in the group previously, excuse me. But they always start with an essential question. And you'll be able to see that I have actually about 14 slides here with vocabulary. Now, I am taking this right from my textbook. It's historically heavy, and that's ultimately why it looks like this. It's this long. So my plan, and it's a perfectly acceptable plan, I know from being in the mentorship program, I can split up my videos. So instead of having one 15-minute video where I go through all of it, I split that up into maybe 2 7-minute videos or even 3 videos. The kids will be much more likely to watch several short videos than they will to completely watch through one long video. So that is what I'm going to do with this. Now my notes are exactly what's on my slides. So if I go back to the folder here and I go to notes, these are my guided notes. And you may have a completely different system for doing your notes. Maybe you're going to have Cornell notes. Maybe you're just going to give kids copies of notes, however you choose to do it. But mine have a personal goal for the unit. And then it's split up. Each section here is a section on the slide that they're going to be reading, and then just blanks to fill in the information. One thing I was told as part of the mentorship program is to make sure to have several visual elements so that it doesn't just look like text. So that's why I have a quote. That's why I have a chart. And that's why I have like maps and pictures and stuff. I don't want it to overwhelm the document, but enough so that it doesn't just look like a big bunch of text. So this is their notes for this, and they can follow along right with the presentation in order to do it. Then, once they have done their notes, watched their lesson video on Edpuzzle, they have to come to me. When they come to me, they have to show me their notes. They have to show me that they've completed their notes, they've done everything, and they're ready to move on to the assignment. So when they're ready to move on to the assignment, which is right here, they'll grab a physical copy of this, and it will take them through one of the things that we focus on in this lesson, which is vocabulary. I decided to put a box here to let the kids know exactly what's required of them to complete in order to get a particular grade. I'm still working on the must do, should do, aspire to do, but you will earn an A, you will earn a B if you complete so many of these things. And remember, my process is that they have to earn, if they want to move on to the mastery check, they need to earn at least an 80% on the document. Okay. So part 1 is all about predicting and defining vocabulary. This is from a Teachers Pay Teacher source that I've used, getting them to actually engage with some of the vocabulary that we're working on, and writing word variations and writing with context clues. So this is based on the vocabulary that is actually in my lesson. And once they have completed that, it tells them exactly what they need to have done in order to do the mastery check. And I also have like a mastery rubric, so they get an idea of what a top score looks like, what a medium score or low score looks like. And I'm still playing around with this, but this gives you an idea. And then lastly is the mastery check, right? And this template I found on the Modern Classroom's website. And the goal of the mastery check is always going to be to get a snapshot of what the kids know. So you don't want to have a bunch of questions. You don't have to ask a question for every single thing that could possibly be. Just pick a few questions that cover the bulk of the lesson. So you really only want to have 2 or 3 questions. Mine are 5 in this one, but this is my longest mastery check. So I have a mixture of multiple choice, true and false, short answer. You could, there could be some sort of application that you want them to do. Maybe if it's a writing unit, maybe you have them answer an essay question. But it's meant to be taken kind of quickly. It's not like a unit assignment that is meant to be taken and the kids do it for hours and hours. It's a one kind of quick snapshot of what they know. And so once the students have passed that, then they can move on to the next lesson. Now, revision is going to be really, really important. Making sure that you have multiple versions of your mastery check, because I know from when I was working through this last year, a lot of kids rushing and trying to skip over stuff to get to the end, and then not being prepared, and then having to kind of constantly be in a position to retake instead of kind of revising properly. So that's the basic layout of my lessons. When it comes to tracking, pacing tracking, public facing tracking, I have a couple of things that I plan on doing. Each kid is going to get a visual pacing tracker. I have a version that is a game board. I'll show you that. And ultimately, it lists every little step and then gives them a kind of a game board that they go through with the due dates. So this is an example of that, and also the public tracker, which we use in class each day, that will have the goal and then who's on pace, who's behind pace, who's ahead of pace, and who's needing to revise. So I have a system for this that we're going to use every single day, but I'm still toying around with the language. I am going to probably be using code names instead of the students' actual names for this. But it's really important to me that they see this every day, so they're constantly aware of where they stand, especially within the rest of the class. And this will help with like groupings, every day when the kids get put into groups. So I, as a teacher, know who needs help and who's good and who can move on. I was telling the group yesterday that I also I have two tables at the front of my classroom. One is a table that has the resources for the assignments and the lessons, and it's where their turn-in box is. And then the other table, which is on the other side of the room, is the mastery check table, where students are facing a wall. They're not facing other students when they take their mastery checks, so that I cut down on cheating as much as possible. I'm also using it's probably 80% paper, 20% online, because I know that some of my students really missed having paper and pencil in the classroom, and I don't want it to turn into, in my classroom, that this is a virtual model. This is a computer based model. That's not, like I've learned from the podcast, from the Facebook group, from just the experience, that like, it's not about the computer. The computer is a tool. But I don't want the kids constantly behind a screen for 45, 60, 75 minutes. I want them to be able to balance and manage their time between using a computer and also writing with a pen or a pencil in their notebook. So that's the system that I have so far. I'll put these documents in the Facebook post, and I'll try to give you a sense of each section of this presentation here. But if there's any other questions I can answer or things you'd like to see from me, just please let me know and I will get that back to you.